now stream.
Okay, apparently we're now streaming. Good morning and welcome to Planning Committee on the 8th of July. I'm Councillor Mike Young. I'll be chairing the meeting this morning. I'm going to hand over to Amanda Whitaker, who's going to do a roll call for members. Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you, Chair. We'll begin the meeting by way of a roll call, as indicated by the Chair, of all of those members in attendance remotely. May I request members to confirm they have a paper copy of the agenda and can both hear and see councillors in the meeting. I'll begin the roll call with Councillor Stephen Akers-Belcher. I don't think Councillor Akers-Belcher is with us this morning.
Present.
No. Councillor Brewer.
Hello, and yes to all of the above.
Thank you. Councillor Brown. I think Councillor Brown is with us. I don't know if he's on mute. I'll come back to Councillor Brown. Councillor Buchan?
Yes to all.
Thank you. Councillor Fleming?
Yes to all, yeah.
Councillor James?
Yes, I'm here, Amanda, and I have the papers.
Thank you. Councillor Lindridge? You there,
Yes,
Councillor?
Amanda. Sorry,
Thank
yes,
you.
Amanda, I've got the papers.
Thank you. Councillor Lyons?
Yes, I'm here and I have the papers.
Councillor Carl Richardson. I'm not sure. Councillor.
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
I've got the papers.
Thank you, Councillor Richardson. Councillor Stokel.
Yes, I'm here and I have the papers.
And Councillor Young, our chair.
Yeah, I'm here and I have the papers.
Okay, can I just go back to Councillor Brown? Have we lost Councillor Brown? Because he was with us.
Oh, he's ringing the chair as we speak, so I'm assuming he's lost his connection. I don't know.
Oh, right. Okay. Thank you. That concludes the roll call. Can I just check that there's no anybody else that's joined the meeting that I've not called?
Hi there, this is Paddy. I just got locked out there, but I'm back now.
Oh, lovely.
Welcome back.
Thank you, Councillor
you.
Brown. That concludes the roll call. I'll hand back to the chair.
Thanks, Amanda. Members will be aware of emails that they've been receiving with respect to item 4.1 and number 2, which is land at Hillview, Greetham. I'm going to propose that we take that to a site visit. Do I have a seconder for that?
I do, Mike. I'll second it, please.
Can we do a roll call for a vote for that, please, Amanda? We're going to do a roll call for a vote.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Councillor Brewer.
And yes. Sorry, for.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
I'd be more than happy to vote for it, but I've already done a site visit personally.
Thank you. Councillor Buchan.
Yes, I already know the area.
And you're voting for a site visit, Councillor Buchan?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Fleming.
Yes, I'll vote for the site visit.
Councillor James.
Yes, I'm happy to have a site visit.
Councillor Lindridge.
Yes, I'm for that.
And Councillor Lyons.
Yes, obviously. I know the area, but I think it's wise that members see the actual land.
And Councillor Carl Richardson.
Yes, I'm all for that.
And Councillor Stokel.
I'm predetermined on the matter, so I'm not sure if I can vote on this.
I would say not then.
Are you abstaining, Councillor Stokel?
Yes, I'll abstain.
And Councillor Young.
Yes, obviously I'm for because I asked for it. Okay, so that item is now deferred until the next meeting. For those people that joined the call to speak on that matter, you'll get the opportunity to speak at the next meeting after members have been on a site visit. Thank you very much. Okay, item 2, any declarations of interest from members? I've got Councillor Brown with his hand up.
Sorry, Chair, it was up from previous.
Oh, apologies. Okay, Councillor James, your hands up.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I have a declaration to make in item 1 on the agenda, the land at the south of Toffs Farm.
Okay, no worries.
I represent the 4 authorities on Suez.
Okay.
But I don't believe that sort of means that I can't participate participate. I'm just making it clear that I do represent on Suez.
Thank you. Any other declarations of interest? Okay. Can members turn the microphones off, please? There's quite a lot of crossover going on. Somebody, is that you, Jim, trying to put your hand up?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
carry on, Jim.
Yeah, item 4. I do know the applicants on that, and I've been on the children's adoption panel as well, just so you make aware of that.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Lindridge. That's great. Right, okay, we'll move on. Minutes of the meeting from the 3rd of March 2020, which was our last meeting. Are members agreed on those minutes?
Agreed.
Thank you. And 3.2, thank you. So 3.2 didn't happen. We had to cancel that meeting due to COVID-19. Okay, item 4.1, planning applications. Item 1 is land to the south of Tofts Road West in Graythorpe, and Dan is going to take this report.
Thank you, Chair. The item starts on page 2 of your PowerPoint and that of the handout. The site relates to land to the south of Tofts Road West, Graythorpe, and is identified on page 3 of the PowerPoint. Planning permission is sought for the development of an energy from waste facility and associated infrastructure. The application is accompanied by an environmental statement. The proposal is set out in full within the committee report. The layout of the site is shown on page 4 of the PowerPoint. The proposed facility is based around the main building. An internal site road encircles the built development with areas of gravel and hardstanding around the proposed structures. The remainder of the site comprises soft landscaping and planting with surface water drainage attenuation basins to the south and to the west of the site, and with 2 Great Crest Newt ponds to be created to the north. Pages 5 and 6 of the PowerPoint show the site and the main building elevation drawings. The main building would sit under a large curved roof ranging in height from 34 metres at the lowest point up to approximately 48 metres at the highest point. Connected to the main building is a 90-metre high concrete chimney stack. The proposals include a number of ancillary structures and offshoots to the main building as described within the report. The energy recovery process is to be housed entirely within the main building. As we move on through the slides, they show different cross sections of the building. Here on page 10 of the PowerPoint, this shows the energy recovery process. In terms of the operation, waste would be delivered to the site in HGVs and deposited into the waste bunker. Cranes mix and stack the waste into the feed chutes of the furnaces. Energy generated from the combustion process powers the turbine, which will feed electricity into the grid. Solid byproducts in the form of ash and air pollution control residues would be produced, each of which have separate handling and disposal arrangements. Gases generated during the combustion process would be cleaned using a number of filters and the chemicals to remove pollutants. Clean flue gas is then emitted from the stack, which will be monitored and reported in accordance with the Environment Agency requirements. Pages 11 to 15 of the PowerPoint show the floor plans of the main building, which is split across 6 levels, including the ground floor, 3 of which are landing levels between the top floor, control room level, and lower levels. Page 16 of the PowerPoint shows a computer-generated visualization of the proposed facility, looking east towards the main building from the northwest corner of the site. Page 17 of the PowerPoint shows a further computer-generated visualization of the proposed facility looking southwest towards the main building from the Tofts Farm West Industrial Estate. Image 3 on page 18 of the PowerPoint shows a photo montage of the proposed development as viewed from Tofts Road West as you approach the site access before the level crossing. Image 4 towards the bottom of the page shows the proposed development as it would appear from an existing public footpath to the west of the site. Here on image 5 of page 19 of the PowerPoint shows the proposed development as it would appear from the public footpath adjacent to the A689, close to the junction of Truro Drive. These existing steelworks at Tata Steel can be seen in the foreground behind the trees to the left of the image, whilst the proposed development is in the background behind the trees in the centre of the image, as highlighted here on the screen. Image 6 at the bottom of the same page shows the proposed development as it would appear from the Greetham playing field, with only the proposed stack visible in the centre of the image, as highlighted here. Images 7 and 8 on page 20 of the PowerPoint show the current view from Vickers Lane in Seaton Crewe and how the proposed development would look from this vantage point respectively. Here we can see only the proposed stack is visible in the centre of the image at the bottom of the page, behind the existing landscape bund. Photograph 1 on page 21 shows an image taken by the case officer looking south over the northwest corner of the existing site, adjacent to the proposed site access. The proposed main building would be located off-screen to the left-hand side, beyond the existing trees. Phillips Tank Farm is visible in the background. Photograph 2 is an image of the site looking southeast along the site's northeastern boundary. The existing railway line is on the left of the image. The proposed main building would be located to the right of the image beyond the existing trees. Finally, photograph 3 on page 23 of the PowerPoint shows existing access to the site via Toffs Road West. The site and associated access would be located on the left-hand side of the image. The site is accessed via Toffs Road West to the north. Toffs Farm West Industrial Estate is located to the east, whilst Greythorpe Industrial Estate is located to the south. To the west of the site is the Tata and Liberty Steelworks and the Phillips Tank Farm. Both the relevant planning history and the site context for the application site are set out within the committee report. The application has been referred to the planning committee due to the number of objections received. In terms of publicity, the application was advertised by way of 269 neighbour letters, 4 site notices and a press notice. To date, 6 objections have been received, citing concerns that include visual impact, the impact on the amenity of neighbours and traffic, increased noise, air pollution and odour. These and all of the planning and residual matters are set out and addressed in the report. Turning to technical consultations, no objections have been received from technical consultees, subject to appropriate planning conditions. Their responses are set out in detail within the report. By way of an update to the report, comments have now also been received from the Ministry of Defence, confirming that they have no safeguarding objections to the proposal. However, the MOD has requested a condition to ensure details of the development and its construction are forwarded to the Defence Geographic Centre so that their aeronautical charts and mapping records can be amended, and this is recommended accordingly. Turning to the main planning considerations that are set out in full within the report, the application site is within an allocated specialist industries area within the development limits of Hartlepool, as set out in the local plan. Whilst the site is not within the designated Greythorpe waste management sub-area, the applicant has satisfactorily demonstrated that the proposed location is more suitable in this instance, and the proposal would not have any unacceptable adverse impacts on neighbouring development sites in the proposed location. The principle of development is therefore considered to be acceptable. In terms of the impact on the amenity and privacy of neighbours, the site is surrounded by industrial development, and significant separation distances are maintained to the closest residential areas at Seaton Crewe and Greetham. Whilst a residential farmhouse bungalow is located approximately 170 metres to the southwest of the proposed building, given this separation distance and the wider industrial context, and as the application site and wider area are allocated for industrial uses in the local plan, it is not considered that the impact on this neighbour would be so significant as to warrant refusal of the application. Furthermore, no concerns or objections have been received from the Council's Public Protection section, subject to appropriate planning conditions. The application is therefore considered to be acceptable in this respect. With respect to the landscape and visual impacts, photo montages of the development in this context are shown in images 3 to 8 on pages 18 to 20 of the PowerPoint, as we've just gone through. The application is supported by a landscape and visual impact assessment, which concludes that the effects on landscape character would not be significant, and whilst localised visual effects would occur, these would not be unacceptable given the surrounding context. The Council's landscape architect has reviewed the submitted documents and advised that these conclusions are acceptable. In view of this, and taking into account the wider site context, the application is considered to be acceptable in this respect. In view of the comments from other relevant technical consultees, the proposals are also considered to be acceptable in respect of all other relevant material planning considerations, subject to appropriate planning conditions as set out in detail within the report. With respect to any residual and non-material matters, these are being considered and addressed within the report. For the reasons set out in the committee report, the application is considered to be acceptable. In summary, the proposal is recommended for approval, subject to the identified planning conditions set out in the committee report, and an additional condition requested by the Ministry of Defence, which requires the developer to give them details and notice prior to the commencement of development so that they can update their aeronautical charts and mapping data. This is to be secured by a planning condition accordingly. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Dan. Any questions from members? Councillor James.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask, has there been any, because I can't identify it in the paperwork, and it's certainly not been mentioned by the officer. Can I ask, has there been any attempts whatsoever to either put solar panels on the roof or to green the roof or to net it off, in fact, either? Because I just have a concern that we are just going to attract seagulls, etc., to the roof, and therefore there could be some damage created. So I think it would be preferable to actually have the roof utilised, either to produce electricity as well as the station, or to green it so that it's less likely to be utilised by seagulls.
Thank you, Councillor James. Dan.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. In respect of this matter, that proposal hasn't been sort of put to the applicant. In terms of renewables provision, given the facility and what it's to produce, it's to be compliant with the relevant renewables energy policies of the local plan. In respect of sort of Councillor James's query, that would be a matter to put to the applicant. However, in terms of the visual impacts of the development and the responses we've had from the ecologist, there's not sort of been any identified need for any measures to address sort of birds nesting on the building.
Thank you, Dan. Councillor James, do you want to come back, or are you happy with that?
I'd like to come back, Chair. Sorry, I would like to come back, Chair, if you don't mind.
No problem.
I am concerned that we are giving access to buildings to be built, which in the longer term will either have to be remedied or they will cause a problem for other businesses or other domestic dwellings in their vicinity. And I'm trying to actually prevent that. And the fact that the site will produce electricity, to me, seems silly that they're missing an opportunity potentially to benefit their own business or other businesses locally by producing solar power from the roof.
Thank you, Councillor James. I think Dan's answered that in the best way that he can. I think if the applicant is here and is going to speak today, they can maybe address that as part of their 4 minutes. Is the applicant here?
Yes, Chair. Nick Roberts. I'm available.
Hi,
and
Nick.
I can pick up on that. Sorry, Chair. I can pick up on that in my speech.
Oh, that's great. So I'll go straight to you then, if that's okay. We'll. Oh, sorry, Councillor Stokel wants to jump in just before you, Nick. Just give me 1 second. I'll just invite Councillor Stokel in.
Thank you, Chair. What are the job prospects looking like to enhance the local economy around Hartlepool and that area?
Thank you, Councillor Stokel. Dan, is there anything in the report that refers to economic growth, jobs? You're muted.
Thank you, Chair. In respect of this matter, the applicant, I understand, has been working closely with the Council's Economic Regeneration section. I draw members' attention to paragraph 1.143 of the report. In respect to the Council's planning obligation supplementary planning document, it states that certain types of development would be expected to produce a training and employment plan for developments of this type. However, that is on a case-by-case basis. In this instance, the Council's Economic Development Manager has confirmed that such a plan is not required based on the number and skills of jobs at the end of the construction, and also the specialist nature of the development. The economic benefits of the development are set out within the proposal of the report. Namely that the applicant's supporting information states the facility would represent a capital investment of circa 230 million during construction, with 450 peak number construction phase jobs created. Once operational, the applicant has advised that the facility would create 40 new permanent full-time jobs and estimates this would add approximately 2.72 million to the local economy each year.
Thank you, Dan. Do you want to come back, Councillor Stokel, or are you okay?
No, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Stokel. Okay, so Nick, if you're ready, you've got 4 minutes. I will give you a 30-second warning before the end of your time. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, and many thanks for this opportunity to speak. I shall be brief and would also welcome the opportunity to assist in answering any questions that you may have. If I may firstly turn to just the point raised by Councillor James. In terms of electricity generation, this is a power station that will generate over 49.5 megawatts of electricity, that of which 50% will be renewable. That will be sufficient to meet the domestic needs of over 108,000 homes. So it is already a major electricity generating facility, and there is no waste material handled outside of the facility. It's all entirely sealed within a tipping hall and within the bunker, and it will not attract birds. So I can assure Councillor James that is not a concern that she should have. Returning to my set presentation, sustainable waste management and the production of decentralised low-carbon energy are matters at the forefront of national policy and pivotal to combating climate change. The proposal before you, the Greythorpe Energy Centre, would simultaneously deliver both of these on a site that is appropriately allocated for this use within your local plan. In terms of sustainable waste management, the scheme would divert waste from disposal to landfill and from export to energy recovery facilities in mainland Europe, where the economic benefits are lost. Thus, rather than putting a waste fuel resource in a hole in the ground or paying someone to use it to generate power in Germany or Holland, the infrastructure investment can be made here in Hartlepool to deliver a facility that would supply sufficient low-carbon electricity to meet the needs of over 108,000 homes. So why should you approve this application at this time? Firstly, your professional officers have scrutinised the proposal for the past 9 months. Having consulted exclusively with all relevant technical stakeholders, they have recommended that you approve the application, subject to appropriate conditions which are all been agreed with the applicant. Secondly, as well as delivering sustainable waste management and low carbon energy, the scheme would create 450 jobs during the peak of the construction phase. And as you heard earlier, once operational, there'll be 40 new permanent skilled jobs created. It's a £230 million capital investment, and a further £3 million invested each and every year thereafter in annual engineering costs, plus £15 million per year in staffing costs, supplies and business rates. This ongoing annual expenditure will create further secondary jobs. In these challenging economic times, this represents a huge investment in Hartlepool. Thirdly, there are no technical consultancy objections to the proposal whatsoever. And fourthly, prior to the submission of the application, we consulted widely with the public and stakeholder groups. Our public exhibition at Seaton Carew Sports and Social Club in May 2019 was attended by 29 local people, of whom 28 expressed support. The planning application before you today is very comprehensive, and it's been scrutinised in great detail and not found wanting in any way. As such, we respect the request you support your officer recommendation and grant planning permission. Many thanks.
Thank you very much. Questions from members. Councillor James wishes to speak.
Well, I just wanted to correct the statement that that Nick Roberts made. A roof space the size that is going to be produced here will attract seagulls, and it will be utilised by them to nest. So rather than end up with a problem for your business and others, I would suggest that you deal with it before you build.
Thank you, Councillor James. Any other questions from members? Okay, thank you, Mr. Roberts. Oh, hang on, Councillor, they're all coming thick and fast now. Councillor Lyons.
It's just I hope that local labour, local people, will be given the chance of the jobs first, rather than bringing anybody from outside. Knowing the situation with unemployment in Hartlepool, can that be guaranteed?
Nick, do you want to come back on that?
Yes, I mean, we're blessed with being in an industrial area where there are a lot of engineering skills. The applicant has worked very closely with ISRA in your economic development department, and is very supportive of local employment. We want to utilise local engineering skills. These are highly skilled jobs to maintain and run a power station. So we will be looking for employing local people.
Thank you, Nick. Councillor Buchan. Councillor Buchan, you had your hand up. Councillor Buchan, are you there? You must be on mute.
At long last, it's muted. It's a question for Nick. Basically, Nick, it follows up on Brenda's point. I worked in the chemical industry for 28 years before I retired. Whenever a new stream was put in, the guys from Tioxide always worked on putting it in, bringing in apprentices so that they knew absolutely how it worked because they built it. Is that your policy, involving hopefully local apprentices from Hartlepool?
I'm the planning consultant. I won't be responsible for building or operating the facility. But no, my client has been working, say, with Israel, your economic development officer, and are very keen to use all opportunities, including apprentices, to come in. There's a huge construction phase, up to 450 people on site at any one time over a 3-year period. So there are opportunities for apprentices during the construction phase and during the operational phase. This is proper engineering.
Thank you. Any more questions from members? Okay. Do we have an objector to this to speak today? Is there anybody who want to object? Any ward councillors looking to speak on the matter? Councillor Cartwright, are you a ward councillor for that particular? Councillor Cartwright, do you want to come in? Are you the ward councillor for that area?
Not for that particular area.
Well, then I'm
Chair,
afraid
no.
you can't speak. I'm afraid it's
Thank you.
It's not an option. I'm afraid. Sorry. Okay, so no ward councillors. General debate. Okay, no further comment on that. Okay, so the recommendation is for approval from officers. The way it's going to work is roll call. So when you're saying for, against, or abstain, it's in connection with the recommendation for approval. Is that clear, or does anybody want to ask any questions before we go ahead? The officer's recommendation is for approval. Amanda's going to take the roll call.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Brewer.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
For.
Councillor Buchan. Councillor Buchan.
His technology's failed him.
Yeah, I'll move on to Councillor Fleming and come back to Councillor Buchan. Councillor Fleming.
For.
Councillor James.
For.
Councillor Lindridge.
For.
Councillor Loynes.
For.
Councillor Carl Richardson. Councillor Carl Richardson.
For.
Councillor Stokel.
For.
And Councillor Young.
For.
And I'll go back to Councillor Buchan.
For.
Thank you.
Okay, that application has been approved. Okay, item 2 has been deferred to the next meeting. Item 3 is the bungalow and adjacent land at Brome Terrace, and Dan is going to bring the report.
Thank you, Chair. This item starts on page 40 of your handout and that of the PowerPoint. The site relates to the bungalow and adjacent land on the south side of Brome Terrace, north of the Hartlepool Water Depot site. This application seeks planning permission to extend and build a detached garage serving the existing bungalow and to build 4 detached 2-storey dwellings as shown on the layout on page 41 of the handout. The proposed dwellings will be served by private gardens with a landscape buffer along the southern boundaries to the Hartlepool Water Depot site. The next slide shows the proposed street scene elevation of the proposed dwellings and the existing bungalow along with the detached garage. Here we have proposed elevations of the proposed 2-storey dwelling house type and the proposed single-storey extension of which it's of a noticeable scale to the rear of the existing bungalow. Here we have the detached garage that's to serve the existing bungalow. In terms of the site context, the application is located on the south side of Brome Terrace, directly north of the Hartlepool Water Depot site, which is accessed via Lancaster Road. There is an existing bungalow known as The Bungalow and its garden on the western part of the site, whilst the remainder is scrubland, largely overgrown and of varying levels. The northern boundary of the application site is enclosed by a concrete panel wall of approximately 2.5 metres in height. Here we have a photo looking towards the application site when viewed from the north of the site along Brome Terrace, with the Hartlepool Water Depot site beyond the application site. Here we have a view of the application site looking south to the south side of Brome Terrace, looking west, with the existing bungalow visible on the right-hand side of the shot. Here we're stood within the site, looking towards the rear elevation of the bungalow, looking west. This is a view of the properties on the opposite side of Brome Terrace to the north. The relevant planning history for the application site is set out in full within the committee report. The application was advertised in the usual way and 3 objections have been received, as set out in the committee report. There are no objections raised for technical consultees subject to relevant conditions which are identified in the report. Turning now to the main planning considerations of the report, the principle of residential development in this location is considered to be acceptable for the reasons detailed in the committee report. The proposed development is considered to be of an appropriate design and scale in keeping with the area, and it's not considered that there would be any significant harm to the amenities of neighbouring occupiers that would warrant a refusal of the application for the reasons set out in the report. Furthermore, the relationships between the proposed development and the existing properties are in line with local policy and guidance, and it's considered that there will be no adverse impacts on the amenity and privacy of neighbouring occupiers. Finally, the proposal is also considered to be acceptable in respect of all of the material planning considerations, including highway safety and access. The development proposed is therefore considered to be acceptable with respect to the relevant material planning considerations identified in the report, and the application is therefore recommended for approval, subject to those identified conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Dan. Any questions from members for Dan? Okay, do we have the applicant? Does the applicant want to speak on this application?
If I may, if that's all right.
Yes, is that
Yep.
Mr. Hutchinson?
It is indeed, yes.
Hi, Mr. Hutchinson. You've got 4 minutes with which to put your presentation forward. Thank you.
Thank you, and good morning to everyone. I'd just like to reiterate 5 points from the committee report. Firstly, the proposal involves the redevelopment of land in a sustainable location. Secondly, the proposed dwellings are of a similar density, scale, height and massing to the surrounding residential units. The scheme is such that it will make a positive contribution to the character of the area. Thirdly, the proposed dwellings are all detached, and this is highlighted as an aspirational dwelling type within the strategic housing market assessment. Fourthly, the neighbouring property to the east of the site is located about 32 metres away. Given this separation distance, the proposal will not lead to material harm to outlook, light, privacy or be overbearing. The closest property to the north in relation to plot 1 is 27 metres away, and in the case of plots 2, 3 and 4, the separation distance is about 39 metres. These distances exceed those required under policy QP4 of the local plan. Finally, on the matter of disruption during construction, the case officer is recommending the imposition of standard conditions concerning working hours and a construction management plan to safeguard living conditions. In conclusion, the proposal will lead to economic, social and environmental benefits in accordance with the framework and in compliance with the policies of the local plan. The case officer's report provides a thorough analysis of the issues, and therefore it's hoped that members support the recommendation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hutchinson. Any questions from members? Do we have an objector who wants to speak? Any ward councillors who want to speak on the matter? Okay, general debate. No debate. Okay, the recommendation is for approval. So therefore, we'll be saying for, against, or abstain on the approval, which is a recommendation by officers. Amanda's going to do that now.
Thank you. Councillor Brewer.
For.
Councillor Brown.
For.
Councillor Buchan.
Come back to me. Oh, go on.
Thank you. Councillor Fleming.
For.
Councillor James.
For.
Councillor Lindridge.
For.
Councillor Loynes.
For.
Councillor Carl Richardson.
For.
Councillor Stokel.
For.
And Councillor Young.
I'll say for, but I don't usually vote on on all applications, but I'll say for.
Thank you.
Okay, item 4 is Fernbeck, Dalton Back Lane in Hartlepool, and again, Dan's going to bring that report. Thank you, Dan. Oh, apologies. I should say that the application has been approved, Mr. Hutchinson. It's the fundamental part of the process. My first mistake on live telly. But yeah, that application has been approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item 4, and I've just given Dan extra time to get his presentation sorted out.
Thank you, Chair. This item starts on page 52 of your handout and that of the PowerPoint. The site relates to Fernbeck, a property located off Dalton Back Lane. The application seeks planning permission for the erection of a first floor extension to the side, a single story extension to the front of the property. The extensions would facilitate 2 additional bedrooms. The applicant's planning statement indicates that the need for the additional bedrooms is due to the applicant's grown-up daughter returning to the family home, whilst the applicants also foster children. In terms of the application site, it relates to Fernbeck, a 2-storey dwelling that is located with an associated livery business at the site and is subject to an occupancy restriction. The property is located off Dalton Back Lane, Dalton PSE. The existing property is accessed from an existing track to the east, with the existing livery business buildings primarily in a U-shape to the west. In terms of the relevant background for the site, this is set out in full within the committee report, but includes the original planning permission for the erection of a 3-bedroom detached dwelling in 2011. The red line boundary for this plan shows the approved curtilage of the actual dwelling. The application has been called in by the Chair of Planning Committee in line with the Council scheme of delegation. In terms of the proposal itself, the first floor extension relates to this element here, with a single story extension here. Here we show on the proposed floor plans to create 2 additional bedrooms. This is some photos of the existing property, which is served by a detached garage, with further views leading up to the existing livery business, and this is looking out from the front of the site towards Dalton Back Lane. And that's a further view to Dalton Back Lane. In terms of publicity, the application has been advertised in the usual way, and to date no objections have been received. Responses from technical consultees are detailed within the committee report, to which no objections have been received, save for the concerns from the Council's planning policy team. In terms of other representations, this includes a letter of support from the Council's Director of Children's and Joint Commissioning Services, who fully supports the application, commenting that the proposal represents an exceptional circumstance and would be to the significant benefit of children and young people in the context of the importance and quality of the foster care that is provided by the applicants at the property. Turning to the main planning considerations that are identified in the report, whilst the personal circumstances of the applicant and the benefits of the foster care provided are fully acknowledged, fundamentally, and for the reasons detailed in full within the report, this would not overcome the planning policy concerns of the application in terms of being able to sufficiently demonstrate the functional need for the extensions to the dwelling that is restricted to the occupancy of someone fully employed in a commercial livery business. Overall, it's considered that the applicant has failed to demonstrate that the costs of the extensions could be sustained by the turnover of the business, or that the resultant size of the dwelling would remain commensurate with the functional requirements of the business. The principle of development is therefore not acceptable in this instance and would warrant refusal of the application. With respect to all other material relevant considerations, there are no additional concerns with this application as set out in the report. In summary, the proposal is recommended for refusal for the reasons detailed in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Dan. Any questions from members? Do we have the applicant? or a representative on behalf of the applicant who wants to speak?
Yes.
Who's that, please?
It's Joy Hodges, the applicant.
Hi there. You've got 4 minutes to speak, so just start when you're ready, okay?
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Firstly, I'd just like to point out some discrepancies in the report, which is paragraph 410 and 428, which states it's a 2-storey extension when actually it's a first floor extension of the existing office. And also in paragraph 4.34, it states that up-to-date accounts have been asked for. We've never been asked for the accounts, just that we need to justify the need. Moving on from that, we would like to explain the reasons behind our current extension plans to our home. Our home is part of our now established livery business, housing up to 18 horses and ponies, which we have built up from 2 farmers' fields over the last 14 years. Our home, which was built 8 years ago in 2012, has 3 bedrooms, which ourselves and 2 siblings who we have fostered long-term for the past 6 years occupy. Due to unforeseen circumstances, our daughter has also moved back into the family home. We decided to foster some years ago as our livery business was thriving and self-sufficient. As the livery operates on a mainly DIY basis, we found we often had spare time on our hands, especially as our own family were now grown up. As I myself had been adopted as a baby, I felt I could potentially have a good insight into blending families, and we both wanted to give something back to our local community. We feel we have time, patience and life skills to offer more to the fostering department within the authority, but due to lack of bedroom space, we are currently limited to only being able to offer daycare and assisted travel, having had to decline placements due to not having enough bedroom space. Currently, there is an overwhelming need for short and long-term placements for young people, including sibling groups. The extra bedroom space our plans would bring could help minimise that need. We feel our livery business has a beneficial indirect link to the fostering, offering a therapeutic environment with an abundance of open space with access to a number of different experiences, including animals, and a closeness to nature. Research shows neglected children often receive emotional comfort from animals, and currently we have 2 separate livery horses owned by foster carers. Life and work skills can be learned through the business with the potential of work opportunities within the business. In conclusion, we feel our livery business complements our fostering commitment and has a favourable impact on the council by keeping young people within our local service. Thank you.
Thank you. That was useful. Questions from members? Councillor Carl Richardson.
Yes, can I just point out that it's that I am a foster carer myself. Does that stop me from speaking or voting?
I wouldn't have thought so, Councillor Richardson.
Yeah. Well, I haven't anything further to say actually at this stage.
Okay, that's fine. Thanks, Councillor Richardson. Any further questions of the applicant?
No.
Okay, so do we have any objectors to this application? No. Any ward members? You received an email. I forwarded it to you from Councillor Brenda Harrison. I'm assuming members have had time to read that because I think it was a couple of days ago when I sent that as part of your deliberations. Okay, general debate.
Can I speak, Chair?
I can't see a hand up. Where's that? Oh, it keeps going up. Yeah, I know. It keeps going up and down for you. Yeah, sorry, Councillor Lindridge, go for it. I can see you having problems there. Go for it.
Right. Thanks. I just wanted the applicant asked Joy a question there.
All right. Okay.
I mean, if you've got the extensions on there, would that potentially accommodate one or two persons, depending on the age, because that's important as far as I'm concerned. It doesn't look as though you're building this property, in my opinion, for monetary terms. So I answer that in terms of the benefits of fostering, please.
That would obviously open up some bedroom space, which could potentially, we're currently approved for 5 to 10, but obviously because we've been fostering the boys now for 6 years, they're 13 and coming up 17. So really it could open up for any age group, but also for sibling groups. You know,
thanks, Joy. That's
quite often come in sibling groups, excuse me.
Thank you. Do you want to come back, Councillor Lindridge? Are you okay with that answer?
No, I think that's great. It is important. You know, I do feel it's not a financial decision that the applicant's making here, and it's for the benefit of the town as well. Thank you.
At this point, we'll enter general debate. Councillor Brewer, do you want to be the one to start off general debate?
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question for the officers. The applicant has said that it's not going to be a second-storey extension, and that was a mistake in the report that we've received. Would that change your recommendation at all?
Dan?
It's not, Councillor. I think one of the sentences incorrectly refers to a two-storey extension, which is our mistake, which we apologise for, but the report does make it clear throughout that is a first-floor extension. So it's a first-floor extension above an existing single-storey extension. Then in addition to that, it's a new single-storey extension. So
Wonderful.
it will create a two-storey element to the house, but it's a first-floor proposal.
Wonderful, thank you.
Councillor Brown?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Chair, I'd just like to say I think this is a great opportunity for a much needed service for our town. And I think, you know, councillors should think hard. I think it would be sad to lose this opportunity. And I think councillors should really think hard when they make the decision.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Any more comments for general debate? Councillor Carl Richardson?
Yeah, I'd just like to fully support this application. There is a need for it, and I don't see any objections from people except the council. But I think on this occasion, it's more favourable that what they're doing, and I think it is a service to the town and to the young people of this town as well.
Thank you, Councillor Richardson. Councillor Lindridge is trying to get back in, I think, so I'm going to give him the floor. Councillor Lindridge.
Thanks, Chair. I look at this and I've seen that on 4.4, the impact doesn't adversely affect the character. There's enough distance in 4.4 for 160 metres. Personally, I think that the situations from an office point of view are either black and white because that's policy. But as a member, I think we should consider each case on its merit. And on this basis, I think there's a far greater need for this to be approved on the basis of the assistance that gives to the town and children's services and fostering in a general capacity. There is a need for foster carers, and I think on this instance I would ask the members to support the application of being accepted rather than being disproved. So that's my opinion on it. I would be supporting the applicant in this case. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Lindridge. Councillor Lyons.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, can I congratulate Mr. and Mrs. Hodges for doing a fantastic job of foster caring. Like's been said before, I think we should support this application. We definitely need more people like Mr. and Mrs. Hodges in the town, knowing the area. I'm ward councillor for Dalton, as you are, and also Councillor Stokel, and I think we should be supporting the application. So I would go against the recommendations of the officers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lyons. Any more general debate? I'm going to bring Jim Ferguson in to sum up the reasons, because it's looking like it's going to go against officers' recommendations. So, Jim, have you made some points to summarise what's been said so far?
Yeah, I have. I've been listening carefully to what the members have been saying, and I've come up with two reasons which I'm proposing to record. as the reasons for going against the officer recommendation in this case, if that should be the case. And basically, they are that the proposal will provide for a much needed service for the town, and that the proposal has an acceptable impact in terms of its character, on its impact on the character of the area, and that those I'm proposing to record as the reasons.
Okay, thank you. We shall go to the vote now. Just to be clear, I'm trying to be clear. It's mainly for me, I believe. But anyway, other members are probably okay with the process. But the officer's recommendation was for refusal. So if you are for, against, or abstaining, it will be against a recommendation of refusal. Is everybody clear? Is everybody clear? Okay, that's fine. I just want to make sure before we go to the vote. Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you. Councillor Brewer.
Against.
Councillor Brown.
Against.
Councillor Buchan.
Against.
Councillor Fleming.
Against.
Councillor James.
Against.
Councillor Lindridge.
Against.
Councillor Loynes.
Against.
Councillor Carl Richardson.
Against.
Councillor Stokoe.
Against.
And Councillor Young.
Against. That application has been approved.
No, can I bear with? Can I interject?
Is that Tom?
Yeah.
Tom is our barrister. Yes, you can, Tom.
Okay. It hasn't been approved. What's happened is that the officer's recommendation has been rejected. If a member wants to move approval, then a member needs to move a motion, and then that needs to be seconded by another member. I suspect that's going to happen, looking at the way the voting has gone. But a councillor needs to move a motion and set out the reasons, which have already been indicated.
Okay, I've got about
put to the vote.
Fine, that's fine. Thank you, Tom, for that interjection.
I'd
Jim,
be happy to make that a move for approval, Chair.
Excuse me.
Whoa. I've got a lot of hands up here, Councillor Brown, so just bear with me, please. Jim wants to come back in, so Jim's going to go first. I've got a list, you see, next to me that tells me who's in the list in order. Jim.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say that any conditions would be delegated to the planning and development manager.
Yeah, I think that's right. Otherwise, we'll spend some time discussing conditions. So it would be, I think Councillor Lindridge actually set out 2 reasons for approval, but the actual, it would also be added to the motion that the matter of conditions be dealt with by delegation by the planning officer.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Jim. Councillor James. Councillor James.
Hello.
Aye.
Right. I would like to move that we approve the application as is, and in addition to what's been said by the officer about delegation, I would prefer it to be delegated to the officers in conjunction with yourself and the Vice Chair.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor James. Councillor Loynes. Your microphone's on mute.
I'll second that, Mike.
You'll second everything that Councillor James has said?
Everything that's been said, yeah.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
That's fine. That's okay. We shall go back to the vote, and Amanda will do the roll call. And so it's for approval, against approval, or abstain.
Thank you. Councillor Brewer.
For approval.
Councillor Brown.
For approval.
Councillor Buchan.
For.
Councillor Fleming.
For approval.
Councillor James.
For.
Councillor Lindridge.
For.
Councillor Loynes.
For approval.
Councillor Carl Richardson.
For approval.
Councillor Stokoe.
For approval.
Councillor Young.
For.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That application is now confirmed as being approved, Mr. and Mrs. Hodges. Thank you very much. There is a matter I want to bring up in any other business, which is point 5, and that is the issue of site visits. Are members happy to have a conversation now? Just nod your heads. I can see most of you on the screen. So, I must commend the planning officers and CICT for the amount of effort that they've put in during this time, and keeping certainly myself up to date with progress on certain matters. One of the key issues that did come up was around the issue of site visits and the fact that members can't physically at this time, due to social distance and all other wider regulations and legislation linked to COVID-19, we can't actually go on site visits, and we all understand the reasons why. Therefore, the planning department have not been complacent on this matter, and I have to say that some of the digital solutions that have come forward have been absolutely fantastic. And what I'm going to do now, with your permission, is to ask Dan to maybe give a bit of a demonstration on an application that was seen today, which was the energy plant. And I think Dan's got that. Have you got that available? Sorry, Dan. Dan's now feeling very on the spot. But yeah, it would be good to see some of the technology in action, which I have to say is absolutely fantastic. I'm really impressed with it. And if members are agreed, then what I'm going to propose is that we have a digital site meeting for the next meeting, a digital site visit rather for the next meeting. But that will be probably the day before, due to some of the technical issues that we may experience. We don't want to be kind of running into time. If there is an issue with doing it the day before, we can definitely try and do it on the morning of planning. But that again, that's down to what people decide in this meeting as part of this item. So I'm going to hand over to Dan, who's going to wow us with his technical skills and wizardry.
Thank you, Chair. In respect of a proposed virtual site visit, as we've sort of recently discussed and subject to members' agreement, through the use of Google Earth, which also allows Street View, and then supplemented with up-to-date site photos from the officer to try and give members a feel for the site. So in this instance, Google Earth allows you to, so in terms of this application site, as we've just, in respect to the Greythorpe Energy, the site was this inverted D shape. And through Google Earth, you can sort of pan around to the site, and you can obviously end up picking out certain features, and you sort of really get a feel for the context. So that can be supplemented in terms of dropping down to street level, which it will take us to now. So again, this is the site. It's obviously got supplementary sort of planting to the northern part of the site, but in terms of the forthcoming agendas, there's going to be a number of other applications that were deferred previously for site visits, and we believe sort of through this use of this technology, as say, supplemented by additional photos, would hopefully give members a positive sort of feel for the site. So you can sort of really hone in and sort of pick out certain features. As say, it works within residential street scenes as well. And obviously you can pan as far out as that if members were after sort of further context. So as sort of discussed, we've got the the sites in the surrounding areas with Greythorpe to the south there. So that's the sort of the proposed technology that we could use on this matter. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Dan. I mean, my own personal view, and it is my personal view, is the technology is such that we should probably never need to go on a site visit again. Yeah. We're at a point in time where if we can throw a piece of landscape around in the way that Dan's just demonstrated there, that's going to be better than any kind of, we stood next to a field looking at a field. I think that technology is huge. But I'm not going to talk anymore. Councillor James wants to. Councillor Brewer was first. My list has just moved, so I'm going to bring Councillor Brewer in first because his hand was first.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to offer my support to the idea as well as Councillor Young there. Just a quick question about the technology itself, if it's Google Earth, isn't that quite out of date? I mean, it's not updated very frequently. Is that correct?
Dan?
I don't know the actual answer to the question, Councillor, because normally when you use Street View, it does give you dates. I know Google have updated a lot of matters. However, what we would intend from the couple of sites I've looked at, they sort of do give you the fairly up-to-date sort of picture. However, what we'd do as part of the virtual site visit, we would supplement it with further sort of site photos by the case officer. So they would go and take some photos in the next week or so. So you've got those up-to-date photos. So in the event, for example, you drop down to street scene and it's showing a lighting column on Google Street View, and if in the last year or two, or depending on when the image was taken, that's since being removed, the up-to-date site photos will obviously provide that confirmation. So for example, if there's an adjacent construction site where construction's commenced, Google Earth probably won't pick that up at this moment in time, but from my sort of regular use of it, it does seem to be fairly up to date. Yeah.
Given that, fantastic idea.
Councillor James.
Thank you, Chair. The comment that I wanted to make was that it's all well and good when the site is an open development site in the way that we've seen today. I have a bit of a concern about using this kind of technology when the objectors are saying that, there's an overlooking, that we're talking about a domestic sort of setting, or that there is an issue around noise or disturbance or wherever it might be in a residential setting, because I still believe very strongly that members need to carry out an actual site visit rather than a virtual site visit in those circumstances. And whilst I accept that that may be difficult in the short term, i.e. there may need to be more than one site visit in order to facilitate distancing, I still don't understand or accept that it's impossible to hold a site visit. So I would just err on the side of caution that we don't throw everything out, that we retain our right to have a site visit when required.
Yeah, and your experience as procedure do there, Councillor James, that makes complete sense to me. I think one thing I would say as well is that some of the stuff that I've seen has kind of alluded to the point that you've made. If there is a big tree, for example, in front of the particular part of the development of a residential property that we're needing to see, if it was a respective application, for example, that would be difficult for us to determine via a digital process. So I take on board those points. Councillor Brewer.
Very good point from Councillor James there. So could I recommend then that at least during the COVID outbreak and potentially afterwards, that we keep the option open for physical site visits, but also have the option on the table of virtual site visits, and just choose it as and when necessary?
I think the issue with that would be that we can't all be on a minibus at the same time. And one of the key constitutional, I believe, or legal matters in relation to that, I'll be corrected by Tom, I'm sure, is that we're meant to be together for those particular visits, and that isn't possible at this moment in time. So I think we probably need to discuss, and maybe we'll do it. I'll do some more consultation with the planning officers and come back with maybe a term of dates and suggest that. But that's another fair point. Daniel. Oh, Dan, sorry, I'm saying your Sunday name there, Dan.
Thanks, Chair. Colleagues in IT have just advised in respect of Councillor Brewer's query, Google Earth is updated approximately every month, as we understand it. And whilst that's not every image, images aren't more than 3 years old at their oldest, but it's understood it is updated every month in that context.
Thanks, Dan. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. It was just in relation to the reality site visits. And whilst we can't all go on the same minibus, could we make our own way there and stand, 2 meters apart whilst we did that? Would that help? I mean, the bin men do something very similar nowadays. They travel in different vehicles to get to a given point.
Tom, can you come in and advise on that, please?
Yeah, I mean, that was my reaction, was that I think the minibus is a very convivial way of getting about, but I can't see any reason why individual members can't make their own way separately to the site in their own vehicles. So I mean, I've rolled it around my head, and I can't see any objection to separate travel myself.
Okay, Jim, do you want to come in on that? Jim Ferguson, that is.
Yeah, Jim Ferguson from the Planning and Development Manager. Just a word of caution: we need to always be mindful of the current state of the regulations. My understanding was that you can't hold meetings outside with more than 6 people. So even if you travel separately, there may be an issue there. So I think what we could do is we could go with a digital choice. But if members at the site visit decide that that isn't how they want to conduct the site visit, then we'd have to look at other options, I think, at that time. But at the moment, it's difficult. Even if members make their own way there, my understanding is you can't have a meeting outside of more than 6 people. So, we'll keep it under review, but that's the difficulty, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've had a look at the relevant council's opinion on that, and I think perhaps the polite way of putting it is that barristers' opinions sometimes differ. I don't agree with the way that barrister has analysed the situation at all.
That's your definite maybe of the day, Tom.
Definite maybe at the moment. I think what we need to do is look at each case on the merits, and if members, I mean, I hear what Councillor James had to say, and I sympathise with her position entirely, because sometimes it's not looking at the site; you actually need to listen and smell and whatever. So I think when we have a look at if it looks as though a situation arises where members feel that they actually have to visit the site, then we'll have a crack at trying to solve the problem. Lawyers will differ, but I'm sure we can find a practical way of dealing with it anyway.
Thanks, Tom. I'd appreciate if you would inject yourself into those conversations and with planning as you would anyway. Is that okay?
Yeah, certainly.
Thank you. Councillor Lindridge.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I think it is important. Councillor Brown's just alluded to what I was thinking in terms of the visits to make our own way there. It's logistics, this, isn't it? And also maybe cost. One minibus, it's impractical, and I certainly wouldn't be wanting to sit on a minibus under the current circumstances. You may have to have 2 lots of 6 in which case you wouldn't be breaching the COVID regulations. I wouldn't see a problem with that if we had 2 lots. I don't know what, from Jim Ferguson's point of view, whether you put a different perspective on it, you'd have to say the same thing twice for us to get the right impression.
Yeah, there's a difficulty with that, in that we couldn't guarantee we were saying the same thing twice, and members wouldn't have the same experience on the site visit, and that could lead to difficulties, I guess. That's my concern, and it doesn't really get. I as always, I will bow to the legal advice on in terms of having a meeting of more than 6 people. But even if we travel in 2 minibuses, we would still have 12, potentially 10 to 12 people at a site meeting outside, which current regulations, as I understand it, don't allow. So they are. We've thought of all these things, Jim, and they're just. Every time you think of a potential solution, there's an issue with it. So we'll keep thinking. But I think in terms of the digital solutions, they do work very well, particularly where you've got a up-to-date Google Street View, and you can kind of on some of them you can actually zoom into the street seamlessly and get a very good street view. Better, I would say, in terms of what you might get if you were on site, because you can then pan out and see the context of the site. Yeah. So the technology is exciting, but we will have to be led by what members are comfortable with. And if they think,
sorry, I think if we really feel strongly about the particular viewings, that we could split it into 2. But you've got the photographic evidence of the offices as well as the technology. So you'd have to combine all 3, and
we would.
Not have that many instances where we definitely need all 12 on the site.
Yes,
and that should be. We just have to consider that.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Councillor James.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to come back because there's a big assumption being made here about members travelling independently, which I don't have any objection to, but not all members, and there are at least 2 on planning that I'm aware of, don't have a car. So, you know, if I give the example of today, I would have had to set off about 7 o'clock this morning to get to this meeting if there were a site visit at Greetham, because I would have had to walk there. So I'm sorry, but so I don't entirely accept that individuals should make their own way to things. And in the same way, I don't accept the explanations that are being given because I think that groups can meet beyond 6. And I also don't accept that photographs or zooming in on a street plan are actually going to provide in all cases the view that we actually need. It's going to be fine and dandy when the approval is that officers support something, but you know, I could take a photograph today and completely skew it in a certain direction, and members would vote on that, and then you find out actually it's next door to something that you didn't actually see in the photographs. So I'm sorry, but I have a little bit more maybe experience, and I'm a little bit more skeptical about being shown things that I can't actually physically change or look at in person.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lyons.
A lot's been said before me, but I'm looking at the application that we deferred this morning at Hillview, Greetham. I'm aware of it, I'm sure you are, and so is Councillor Stokel. But I think we could get round it. I mean, like Councillor James said, that there's not everybody got a vehicle, but I'm sure one of us could take one of you and sit in the back and maybe split it in between 2, maybe one go on the Tuesday and another one go on the Wednesday morning, and officers obviously make a note of questions that have been asked or comments that have been made on the day before and relay it back to the planning committee on the Wednesday morning before the meeting. It's just a thought, but I think there is ways around it. It just needs a little bit more thought. But I think we could do it in two separate ones, you know, 2 separate visits, each going on their own. But like the Councillor James hasn't got a vehicle, so I would be willing to take Councillor James sitting in the back, and I think that's acceptable. We've got masks, so every precaution would be taken, and I'm sure somebody else would do the same. But that's just my opinion. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think Brenda there sort of said something similar to what I was going to say, but I was just going to add that it could be the minibus that just carried 2 people. That would be lots of room to keep socially distanced, whilst the rest of us made our way in our own car. But I think it's all difficult, but I think everything's manageable. Thank you, Chair. Thanks.
I think to sum up what I'm going to suggest is, because the site visits for the next meeting are going to be digital because of COVID, we'll be better versed in whether that has been acceptable or not at that point. Would members be generally in agreement with that? Let's see what happens at the site visit for next meeting. Just nod your head, it's easier that way. Great. Okay, I've got no other business, therefore we can close planning committee at 10:48. Thanks everybody for coming. Have a great day.
Councillor Young, Councillor James has got a hand.
Oh, Councillor James, apologies. I was in a rush to get out there. Councillor James.
I'm just trying to clarify, Chair. So are you saying that the Greetham application will be dealt with virtually? Because I would be unhappy with that.
Well,
we've voted twice for a site visit, and I think we'd need to do a site visit.
I am going to have to take advice on that, because I think we're unable to do that. I think that's been. Jim.
Yeah.
You're muted.
Sorry, if we do the site visit virtually, we augmented by the photographs from officers, up-to-date photographs. If you find that when members view that, if they find that that's not acceptable, then we can look at other options.
Is there a solution in this that members can actually, between now and the next meeting, go and have a look at the site in their own vehicles? I mean, is that something that members are willing to do? I mean, I don't want to ask you to do that, but is that something that people would be minded to do? Councillor Carl Richardson.
Yeah, I haven't got a problem with the next meeting being done by virtual, but I do take into consideration what Councillor James was saying. I don't think this has to be, you know, for everything. In particular, when we're talking about small houses and planning applications in adjoining houses. But I think on the next one, I think it could be done by virtual. But as the officer just said, if people aren't satisfied, then we can have a look at it again.
Yeah.
On that particular application.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments before I close the meeting properly? No. Okay, so official closing of the meeting is 10:51. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.